And good afternoon, producer Susan. Do you know what today is?
It's April Fools.
April Fool's Day, April 1st, but I got no jokes today. I got too many other ridiculous stuff. I don't need to play any jokes. You were out of town for a week, weren't you?
Yeah, and some interesting observations about unemployment because we talk about unemployment a lot
Uh-huh.
on this show. So I was in Las Vegas I went to a couple of different casinos, three to be specific,
Uh-huh.
and I know you enjoy going to the casino once in a while too, and I know you tend to gravitate more towards the video poker, whereas I like the poker tables.
Right.
I like that social interaction, and the two of the three casinos I went to, all the pits were closed. And I think it's because of lack of staff. They don't have dealers to work these pits
That's
because the video
epidemic
machines don't need people. There's no
e-
humans required.
epidemic wherever you go. There's a shortage. In fact, the casino in Pennsylvania that I go to, they've opened their own dealer school in the casino. They've
Yeah.
converted they've actually rented, there's a retail space attached to it, and they've actually they're leasing a retail space that used to be a store, and they're now training their own dealers in their own dealer school.
Yeah,
That's what they've
so
done.
two of the three
Yeah.
casinos, I
Oh,
checked back a couple times and all the pits were closed. And then I'm talking Friday and Saturday, like prime
well,
weekends,
yep,
you
I
know?
know it. Yeah, trust me, if you want a job, you can get a job, unless you're a
Yeah.
drug addict or have a mental condition. But
Hmm.
if you have your faculties about you and you want to work, you can work. By the way, last time I looked, the Walmart near me had a sandwich board sign in the lobby, now hiring shelf stockers full time with benefits, 17.50 an hour.
Wow.
And how much is
There's a lot of conversation going on in Pennsylvania about raising the minimum wage. So currently the minimum wage in Pennsylvania is 7.25.
okay?
And there's a lot of help wanted signs in our town, and there is not a job for like less than $15. So
Yeah.
minimum wage by just
It,
necessity is 15,
the
even though
federal
the state
minimum
law.
wage, but you just touched on something near and dear to my heart. The federal minimum wage is an irrelevant dinosaur.
It is. It doesn't need to exist because there is no job in this town under $15.
Right. And the whole concept of having a single given the diversity of cost of living, from San Francisco to New York to Jackson, Mississippi, the whole concept of a single federal minimum wage, his time has passed. Less than 2% of the country works for minimum wage, and the vast majority of who do work in tip positions like waiters and
Yeah.
wait and cocktail waitresses, where they can easily make 2 to 4 times. In fact, I've asked some cocktail waitresses in casinos, what do you make in a good night? And they say, 300, 350
Yeah.
per night
Yeah.
in cash tips.
Hmm.
They would work even if the pay was zero, they would work there. If
Yeah.
you're knocking down 1,500 a week in cash tips, and that's, by the way, after they have to share some of the tips with the bartender, and there's somebody called a bar
Mhm.
back, who cleans the glasses and whatnot. That's net after they share
Yeah.
their tips. Anyway, I got so much to talk about. I know we could spend a long time on tips and minimum wage, but I got so much to talk about. Um, Quote of the week. We all know who Thomas Sowell is, the economist.
Yeah.
I got a
We
nice
talk
quote
about
from
them
him.
quite often.
Yep. Well, we're going to quote from Thomas Sowell. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. Now, we've played clips of this guy, Justin, whatever his name, who stops people in Times Square.
Yeah.
But this
Hmm.
time it's somebody else, and he's actually picking on women in college. These are not your typical, high school dropouts. These are women enrolled in college. And he asked them questions. He first, are you enrolled? What's your major? But so these are college women, and he's asking them simple questions, stunned what they can't answer. Runner up to the stupidest thing I've heard all week. We'll tell you about the childish and destructive ways some people who aren't happy with the efforts of Elon Musk and his DOGE team are expressing that anger. We'll then play a clip of Elon Musk and a member of his DOGE team describing the shocking number of Social Security numbers being issued to non-U.S. citizens. And by the way, I happen to know this guy on the DOGE team. Believe it or not, I know a member that I've had dinner with this guy. In another example of government waste and inefficiency, we'll give you an update. Remember the Green New Deal, and they had 42 million for rural broad to
Yeah.
bring high-speed rural broad. Well,
Yeah.
3 years later, we'll tell you. It's an interview with you. We all know who John Stewart is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
late night talk show host.
Right. He's a talk show host, and he's doing an interview with this guy who's explaining to him how many homes have been connected after 3 years to high-speed broadband. Another example of government waste and inefficiency will tell you which government agency was getting ready to spend $1 billion on a survey that could have been conducted for less than $10,000. Fortunately, it got stopped. We'll tell you about a recently released study that found that the more COVID booster shots you got, the more likely you were to contract a COVID infection. Can you believe that? The more shots you got, the more likely you were to get a COVID infection. Can you
Interesting.
believe that?
Yeah.
Remember Biden had all 5 shots and he had 3 different COVID infections? This
Yeah,
explains it.
I only got the first two. That was it.
You and me both. You know what the Freedom of Information Act is, right?
Yes, yes.
And you know, like when you do it, if you want like copies, they can charge you like 10 cents a copy, whatever, if
Yep.
you want documents copied. We'll tell you how
Administrative
much
fee.
a Colorado woman got quoted by a library district to fulfill her Freedom of Information Act request. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from San Antonio. And what do we say about thugs who rob homes in Texas?
Well, in Texas in general,
Yeah, it's not gonna
not
end
very
well.
bright to rob a home in Texas.
Or very brave or stupid. But anyway, once again, 3 of them tried it. But not all 3 have lived to talk about it. All right. Here's a quote of the week from economist Thomas Sowell. He said, "It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong." And let me give you a
Yeah.
simple example. When Congress, when one side or the other, Democrats decide to shut down the government by voting to block a budget bill, Congress shuts down. Can you imagine how often that would happen or how short-lived it would be if, as a result of that decision, that all those congressmen would, not only the congressmen, but they and all of their staffs would forfeit their paychecks? Because right now, what happens is after it's over, everybody gets
Mhm.
back pay, right? Can you imagine if when you voted to shut
Yeah.
down the government, you're not getting a paycheck and nobody on your staff is going to get a paycheck? And no, when the government resumes, there'll be no back pay. Can you imagine how many government shutdowns we would have?
That, the other thing that is tied to that has always really bothered me about when they do these sort of things is that they recess for like vacation.
Hmm.
They need to stay there until the job is done. There is
Exactly.
no vacation until you finish your job.
Yeah, you don't get to leave in the middle of a crisis. So again, one more time by Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, and that's always bothered me that they go on this quote recess
Right,
when there's work to be done.
right. So one more time. It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. So uh, so that's Thomas Sowell. That'll be in the show notes if anybody wants to look at it. All right. So this is
Yeah,
not Justin Awad, but this is somebody else asking some women. I don't know what you want to call them. That they're you refer to a woman in college, a college girl. Like you want to? Can we call it? Is that going to get me in trouble for referring to them as
they're
college girls?
women. They're over 18. They're 18 to
Okay.
22-year-olds, so they're women.
All right. So here we go. He's actually this is a. I'm sorry, it's not a guy. This is actually a female interviewer. Her name is Liberty. Uh, I don't know exactly what her name is. Anyway, but so this is a. Oh, she has this website called Chicks on the Right. This is her. This is her. I don't know if it's her blog.
Gotta look
Chicks on
her
the
up.
Right. It's got the little camera sign at the end of it. Chicks on the Right. Anyway, that's her. That's her Facebook, or not her Facebook site, but so here we go. She's asking these college women first, "What's your major?" And then she asks them some simple questions. So here we go. Here we go.
Business biology. Elementary education. What shape is the U.S. Pentagon building? The
What shape is the U.S. Pentagon building? Here we go.
The Pentagon.
Just a square.
Hence the
Who
name.
won the Civil War? What's the Civil War? So it's the civilians versus whoever was in power.
Who won the Civil War? The civilians versus the government.
How many justices are on the Supreme Court? Justices. So like when you say that, like you mean like the FBI? Name three.
How many justices are on the Supreme Court?
Wait, the FBI, like, have they never heard of like Ruth
Yeah,
Ginsburg?
yeah. Oh, you mean like the FBI?
These states that border Canada. I didn't know Canada had a border. What are your major?
How many states border Canada? I didn't know.
You know, that one I'd have to think I'd actually have to go through and count them.
But you know it's like six or seven. But so here we go. I'm gonna play it again.
Business, biology, elementary education. What shape is the U.S. Pentagon building? The Isn't it just a square? Who won the Civil War? What's the Civil War? So it's the civilians versus whoever was in power. How many justices are on the Supreme Court? Justices? So like when you say that, like you mean like the FBI? Name 3 states that border Canada. I didn't know Canada had a border.
Oh, name 3.
Oh, and
Okay.
she didn't ask for all. She said
Oh,
just
she said name 3 states. I thought she said how many states.
no, just name 3. Can you name 3 states that border Canada?
Okay. I was gonna say I thought when I first heard it, I thought it was how many states? Because honestly, that question I'd have to think about. I'd have to go through my head and count them, but I could easily name 3.
Well, go ahead. Name me 3 states that border Canada.
Well, Maine,
Uh-huh.
New York, and Michigan.
And Vermont and North Dakota
Well, yeah, but you said only name 3. I
And
mean, I know
Idaho and
Washington,
Montana, right?
Idaho, North
Okay.
Dakota,
Yeah.
but Montana.
Idaho. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, and these are and one of these women is in her major is elementary education, so she wants to be a teacher. I think if
Teaching
you
the young
I think
minds
if
of America.
I think if you can't uh, tell me how many sides are on the Pentagon, you shouldn't be able to teach young children.
Yeah.
So, all right. Um, so let's keep going. All right. How much have you heard about people doing stupid things because they're mad at Elon Musk? How many?
Oh, yeah, it's been on the news like every night this week. And I have a lot of reasons for not wanting to buy a Tesla or any EV car for that matter. And we've had many discussions on this
Right.
show. And Elon is not one of those reasons.
No, no. And by the way, here's what people don't realize. Do you know the standard Tesla has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 9 cameras? 9,
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
they even have like in the door pillars, they have cameras on
Yeah.
both sides facing front and facing back. So they got all these
Yeah.
people like coming up and keying people's cars. Well, they're being caught in the act by the cameras, their motion sensors. And what's the sense? Somebody bought a Tesla. Elon Musk Tesla's already been paid for the car, and the person whose car you're is probably a liberal just like you. So what are you accomplishing by keying?
Exactly. That's the funniest thing is that these are liberals who are damaging other liberals' cars.
Right. Now there's a couple where like there's a guy in an ATV and he's got like a metal brush guard, they call it like you ever seen like they call them on some cars, they've got like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
got an ATV and he's on a Sunday in a Tesla dealership and he's ramming his ATV with the metal bumper into the sides of Teslas in the parking lot. Of course, he got caught. People, of course, we talked last week about up in Boston where they were setting fire to the Tesla charging stations. There's another video where there's a bunch of people in their gas-powered cars parking sideways, blocking access to all the Tesla charging stations. There's another one with people, and they've got a boom box, and they're doing a line dance in the parking lot of a Tesla dealership. And there's even a guy went out to a toy store and bought a bunch of toy Tesla cars, and he's got a hammer, and he's got a video of himself smashing toy Tesla cars with his hammer. How is that? How stupid is that? So, oh my God.
Yeah, and we've had so many conversations on the show about like all the downfalls of why you and I would not purchase a electric vehicle, and Elon was never one of the considerations.
Right. All right. Now we've got a bunch of illegal aliens in this country. And this came as a shock to me. I'm only play a clip. It's a 5-minute video. I'm going to play it in 2 minutes. And by the way, the guy you're going to hear talking is a guy named Antonio Gracias, and I know Antonio personally. Um, he and I were involved in a business deal together, so I happen to know Antonio. Very bright guy, and by the way, he's a multimillionaire. But he volunteered his time away from his own. He owns a venture capital investment firm, and he volunteered to take time off from running his own company to work on DOGE. Again, the guy's a multimillionaire, um, but he did some work investigating illegal aliens getting Social Security numbers. So This is a big event. It's on stage, Antonio, and he introduces Antonio. Um, and here's what Antonio tells you. And again, I'm only going to play about 2 minutes of this 5-minute video. Here we go.
It'll be okay. I mean, Buzz Aldrin's still alive, and he went past the belts.
Work. Is this working? Yeah, it's on now. Yeah.
There you go. So, Antonio, can you tell us what you Antonio is helping out with the Social Security. So just trying to review Social Security, where you may have heard that we found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database. This is so crazy. And then you'll notice there's a strange trend here.
And he's got a big bar chart with a series of charts, and each successive column on the bar chart gets bigger and bigger. So he's talking about this bar chart that's up on a big projection screen.
Where how many Social Security numbers were issued? Do you want to?
Yeah. So let me tell you what happened here. We started at the top of the system.
You want to talk about a lot of it?
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came up with a big list of stuff they're working on. You've heard some of that already, but this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we're like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. Yeah, this country's been great to us. My brother and sister all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political. This is about America and the future of America. And there are a lot of good people in the system that pointed us in this direction. I want to honor them right now. That work in the government today, who took risks to show us these numbers and tell us what's going on. Yeah. So I want to stop bringing it. I want to honor those people today. Very good people. Very good people. I have been from DC to Social Security offices to the border to track this down, and very good people have helped us along the way. I want to thank them.
Yeah.
This number, what this is when you come in the country, if you're illegal, there's a couple ways to come in. You come in through a port of entry, and you can tell them you're afraid. They'll give you an asylum case. You get an interview, then you get in. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just go to the border. Literally, this happened. I talked to Border Patrol myself. Elon was there too. I went to Laredo, and I went to Bronzeville. Elon went to Eagle Pass. You walk up to a Border Patrol officer, and you tell them you want to come in. They have a couple of choices. They could charge you with a misdemeanor or a felony under 1325, or they can make it an administrative offense, like a parking ticket, basically. They were told to do that, make it an administrative offense under the last administration. And then you walk across the border, they do what's called a release your own recognizance, and they give you an NTA, notice to appear, which is to appear to judge. The wait times on judges are like average 6 years. Look at Grok, you'll see it on immigration judges. There's only 700 of them. This is 5.5 million people. Okay, so what happens then? Once you're in the country and you got asylum through one of these pathways, and we map the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765, it's the work form. You get this form called the 766, that's the authorization, and then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security number. No interview, no ID.
This is
5.5 million illegal aliens have been mailed Social Security cards and have been issued Social Security numbers and mailed their cards with no interview and no picture ID. Is that mind-blowing?
Yeah, and I think, he made and I said this before myself, he is pro-legal immigration.
Yep. His parents are.
And for those who don't know, Elon Musk is an immigrant. He was born in South Africa, and he's also half Canadian.
Right. So
he's not an American.
Yeah, and Tony's mother and father and his older brother or sister were all born in Spain. So,
and it's interesting, we have a very large international population here in central Pennsylvania at Penn State through mostly Asia, China, Japan, the huge student population. And they're here legally, they're here on student visas, but if they want to get a job, a part-time job to help, pay for their books or whatever, the process for them to get a social security card, and immigrants can get social security cards. As a matter of fact, you're required to get a social security card as an immigrant if you
Right.
want to
If you
have a
want to
job
work,
in the United
if you want to
States,
work legally, right.
because it's used for tax purposes. And
Right.
man, the steps that these international students have to go through in order to obtain that social security card legally is like mind-boggling, especially when again,
Yeah.
these are international students whose English is not their first language, and they're
Right.
trying to navigate our very complicated legal and government system here in the United States.
Right.
I really feel for our students here, our international students here, who have to go through this process legally.
Right. And yet, as Antonio pointed out, if you've come here illegally with nothing, literally no ID, no birth certificate,
Yeah.
no driver's license, they give you a notice to appear, and that notice to appear, by the way, can be used to get through transportation at an airport
Yeah.
to get through security. You simply, call Social Security or email Social Security. You text them, you give them the number of your notice to appear, and they will mail you, no questions asked, not even a picture. They will issue you and mail you a Social Security card. 5.5 million Social Security numbers issued and mailed to illegal immigrants. Again, we could spend the rest of our 30 minutes here, but we don't have time. I want to move on to Jon Stewart interviewing this guy who's explaining to him how many, 3 years, almost 3 years, the Green New Deal had 42 billion set aside to bring high-speed broadband to rural homes. By the way, as of today, do you know how many homes have been connected to high-speed broadband?
Not many.
If you guess the number greater than one, you guess too high. So this guy's explaining to Jon Stewart why all the steps involved and where all the money's been going after 3 years. Here we go.
Funding opportunity within 180 days. That's step one. Step two, which all 56 state applicants completed, is states who want to participate must submit a letter of intent. After they do that, they can submit a request for up to $5 million in planning grants. Then the NTIA, step four, has to review and approve and award, again, planning grants, not broadband grants, planning grants.
And it's still at the NTIA. It's still at the first step.
All right. So the NTIA must issue a NOFO within 180 days. States who want to participate must submit their letter of intent. Step three, they can request up to $5 million in planning grants.
Just planning.
Just planning. Step four, the requests are reviewed, approved, and awarded by the NTIA, which currently all 56, 3 years later.
By the way, he's referring to 56, so that includes the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam. So it's not just the 50.
The U.S. properties.
The U.S. territory, right, including the territories and District of Columbia. Okay.
Later, all 56 applicants had passed through at least step five. It took more than 3 years. So it's a long time. States must submit a 5-year action plan. So the states kind of go back and they kind of think about how they're going to do this. And they don't just say, okay, thank you for the money. We're going to spend it. And you can see how it worked out later. We're like, here's our 5-year action plan. Then the FCC must publish the broadband data maps before NTIA allocates funds. So having done the NOFO, the letters of intent, the request for planning grants, then the review, approval, and awarding of the planning grants, then the 5-year action plans. In between that, the federal government has to put forward a map saying where it thinks we need rural broadband subsidies. And then, of course, the states need an opportunity to challenge the map for accuracy. And you can
now, by the way, this goes on for another 4 minutes, and Jon Stewart is literally holding his head.
And I live in a rural area, and we don't have very good internet here, but a good friend of mine who lives a little bit farther out from town from me, they installed fiber way out, in the surrounding areas,
right,
and the surrounding farms. There is literally fiber installed in the street, along the streets, and it is not connected to anything, because he recently wanted to get internet at his house. Believe it or not, didn't have internet. Probably one of the few Americans who didn't have internet. And I was like, there's literally fiber at the bottom of your driveway, and it's not connected to anything.
Oh my goodness.
You can't get internet.
Well, by the way, and here's the other ironic thing. Do you know you can go to Home Depot and buy a Starlink dish and a mod?
And that's exactly what he did. He went and he got a Starlink.
They could have
literally cannot get internet cable or fiber internet because it's not connected to anything.
Right. You can go to Home Depot. Last time I looked, you can buy the dish and the modem, which is all you need. You can install the dish and the modem for Starlink.
And the dish, the dish actually just looks like a magazine. It's flat and square. It doesn't look like people are familiar with DirecTV or dish, like the actual satellite dishes. It's not a dish. It's a very flat.
It's like a book. It's about the size of a book.
It's flat. It's very flat, like a magazine. And it sits right now. He has it propped up against a tree stump.
And you could have given $590. You could have had every single home in America already connected to Starlink within 6 months just by issuing people vouchers. But no.
And for those who don't know who owns Starlink.
Well, it's not Elon. Actually, he's a minority shareholder, but he's the CEO of Starlink, but he's not the only. People think Musk owns Tesla. No, Tesla's a publicly traded company, and Elon Musk he's the CEO.
And as a Starlink.
Yeah, and right. And he's a big shareholder, but he's not the majority shareholder. He doesn't own it. So
but he's heavily involved.
Heavily involved, right. All right. Yeah. How much time we got left?
You have about 8 minutes.
All right, so we'll kind of run through this real quick. All right, COVID. There's a study. Let me bring up where this study's from. Interesting. This is credible. This is peer reviewed. And let me see where this study's from. It was published. Hang on. And the study is from a German research. We all, with what people call the vaccine, it was an mRNA shot from Pfizer Moderna. They talk about the background, all the risks, people with myocardial problems, whatnot. Okay, this study was published in the Journal of Infection. So this is a peer-reviewed journal. They found that people with higher levels of these antibodies were 80% more likely than those with lower levels to become infected with COVID over a 6-month period. That's why Joe Biden, who had all 5 shots, got COVID 3 times. So talk about doing the exact opposite.
Jerzee Joe, how many times have you had COVID?
No, never. Not once. Not once.
Yeah, and I had it one time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me put this. Not once that I know of. I had a cold one time for a couple of days. Maybe it was COVID. I don't know. But I had a cold. So was it COVID? I guess we'll never know. Have I been tested for antibodies? I don't know, but I may have had COVID, but I only got the 2 shots and I'm still here. All right. So let's move on to Freedom of Information Act. Colorado, now, Freedom of Information Act is a federal law. It's, for federal agencies, but most states have their own version. And Colorado has one called CORA, which is the Colorado Open Records Act. Well, a woman who used to work as the treasurer for the city of Colorado Springs, she's retired now. She was curious how the Pikes Peak Library District was spending their money. So she put in a CORA request about their expenditures, and before they fulfill it, if there's any cost involved, they're supposed to come back. And under CORA, by the way, if the amount of effort or labor involved is 1 hour under state law, there's no charge. But if there's any charge at all before they move forward and start racking up cost in your account, they have to get your approval. Well, this woman, her name was Lisa Bigelow. She got the response to her Colorado Open Records Act. And when she first read it from the Pikes Peak Library District, she thought it was $25,000 to fulfill her CORA request. And then her friends pointed out and said, no, you misread it. It's not 25,000. It's $25,377,971. $25 million to fulfill her CORA request. Can you imagine?
I feel like it should be like if it's a 10-page request, 10 cents a copy, that's $1.
Well, plus the labor. I mean, if it took them 6 hours to compile the information, and then she said, okay, she said, I made a mistake. She said, I didn't time bound, I didn't put any time boundaries like, when I wanted these records, I should have said, for the 6-month period or the 12-month period. But even that, the library district's only been in existence, for 20 years. To be quoted $25 million. By the way, she figured it out that assuming
Yeah.
a 40-hour work week and not accounting for holidays and vacation, a full-time employee works 2,000 hours a year. She figured out that that would be 660 man years of labor to fulfill her Cora request. So you ever get the
But they
sense?
haven't been open that long.
No, you ever? Yeah, I'm sorry, 600,000 hours to fulfill her. You ever get the sense that like they didn't really want to give her what she was asking for?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. All right. We're going to finish on time for change. So let's talk about taxpayer relief shots. And for those people who are not familiar with taxpayer relief shots, here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, telling you why we call it a taxpayer relief shot. All right, here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And again, people have a right to defend themselves, even though a lot of states, by the way, are trying to take that right away from you. And every time we have these people, how many do we have? What, 30, 40% of our taxpayer relief shots come from Texas, which has one of the highest gun ownership rates in the country? Right?
Yeah.
How stupid do you have to be a thug and to break into a home that you know is occupied? We've had 60-year-old grandmothers and housewives and everybody else, and you know this home is occupied, and three guys break into an occupied home in the middle of the night. Here we go.
11 minutes after 6, developing right now. One person has been killed following a shooting near the airport.
This happened at the Wood Hollow Apartments on Sahara near San Pedro. And that's where we find our Sylvia Rincon this morning with more.
We just got an update moments ago. We have learned from investigators that there were 3 intruders. One of them is dead. The other 2.
Now, do you think the other 2 stuck around or tried to drag their dead body away to safety?
Yeah, I'm going to make a wild guess here and say they left.
Let's find out.
3 intruders. One of them is dead. The other 2 are still loose. Now, we have also learned that the people inside, there was about 6, a man, a woman, and 4 small children under the age of 10. They tell us that it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when these intruders forced their way into this apartment up there at the top, the 2nd floor. And we are also learning that those intruders had handguns on them and were threatening the family. They were in the process of taking things when one of them pinned down the man who was inside. At one point, that man got loose, grabbed his own handgun, and started shooting at the intruders. One of them is dead here at the scene. The other 2 took off. Police are currently looking for those individuals. It's not clear exactly what they were taking. They said, though, it is obvious that they were taking items from inside that home. Fortunately, though, the children and the 2 adults were not injured. This is still an ongoing investigation, and this is still a developing scene. Reporting live on the city's north side, I'm Sylvia Rincon, News 4, San Antonio.
Have we ever had one where the dead thug's buddy stuck around ever?
No, I don't think we have.
I can't recall one either. All right. Hey, we're running out of time. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Nope. Happy. Did you get pranked today, Jerzee Joe?
Not at all. Well, actually, one of the radio stations that I listen to, you know the sound your smoke detector makes when the battery's going low?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were every 15, 20 minutes, they would do the chirp over the radio, and they had people looking for the smoke detector in their house with the bad battery. But that was the only one that I heard today. Anyway, how about yourself? Any pranks?
No, thankfully, because like you mentioned earlier, I was traveling today, so I was hoping for an uneventful April Fool's Day.
All right. All right. Well, then we're going to wrap up. And so I just want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and important. I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to this podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links, and in particular the video links, which I cut short, I didn't play all of them, but I think if you want to see the whole video link and see some of the charts and graphics they're referring to, again, I only played 2 or 3. The producer Susan will put them up on the website here in the next couple of days. And I think you really owe it to yourself to watch the whole video, including the charts and graphs that come with them. Anyway, if you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to joe@jerzee.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee, Jerzee. And again, if you want to see those links on the website, it's jerseyjoe.com. Again, with Jerzee being spelled Jerzee. And with that, producer Susan, unless you have something else to add, I will sign off and talk to you next week. You good?
Yep.
All right. Talk to you next week. You have a good week. Take care.